Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joined us so far. We're very happy to have the first, apologies, very happy to have the last or the third of the inspiration workshops with all of you. I saw some comments in the chat regarding not hearing, but I think it was just that we hadn't started yet, but let us know if there's still issues. So welcome again to everyone who has joined us for this third and last inspiration workshop that is part of the Data for Now initiative and the concrete project that we are about to start with 8 countries in Africa and Asia. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I'm assuming that some of you are coming back and have already joined us in earlier workshops, but for those of you who join us for the first time in these inspiration workshops, a special welcome. On behalf of UNSD, I want to also thank you for the continued interest, and I believe we really have a very interesting program today as well. We will be focusing on IT architecture, which is a cross-cutting element that we think can be helpful for many of you in the process of making better use and more use of innovative data sources, methods, and tools. We will, as in the 2 other workshops, also record, and we will share both the PowerPoint materials and the recordings. We hope that everything will be shared with you in the course of next week, and apologies for delays in sharing some of this from the earlier workshops. So the workshop agenda for today is that I will give, in combination with colleagues, a brief overview of the project. We will have an introduction to the series of inspiration workshops. We will give you an understanding and linking of data flow in the system to data infrastructure needs. We will also give some strategy and governance overview before jumping into technology. Following that, we will hear country experiences on data infrastructure, tools, environments from technology and policy perspectives. And we will talk about an evolving data stack. So I think we have quite a lot of different elements here, quite a packed program, but the workshop today is 1 hour shorter, so 2 hours in total. Most of you are probably familiar by now. The Data for Now initiative supports countries in the use of innovative sources, technologies, and methods for the streamlined production and dissemination of better, more timely, and disaggregated data for sustainable development. It is co-led by Statistics Division, the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, TRENDS. It was launched by the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in September 19. And the national statistical offices are our main counterpart in countries, and these workshops are mainly for you to give you some further ideas to help all of us have more of a common idea of what the different elements are, give you some inspiration before we dig more into the topic with each one of you. We will reach out to you bilaterally now again soon. The agreement with Italy is around the corner, and we are looking forward to the bilateral following up from here. Coming back to the guiding principles that many of you already will have seen as well, I will try and give it from a little bit of a different perspective today, given that the workshop today is about IT architecture. In any case, the priorities are always identified by the countries. Like we've said, you see the big red dot in the middle. But on the data principles, the holistic perspective and the data quality remain important. And from a data architecture and infrastructure perspective, they're the key elements that need to be in place. And I would particularly like to highlight the protection of privacy and confidentiality, how we can help create and work together to build a sustainable and good data architecture that continues to protect the privacy and confidentiality of your population and the information that is in the data that you collect. But also to set up a system that helps ensure and makes it easier to process and ensure data quality. On the work approach principles, I think it's the same key elements around openness, inclusiveness, around continuously having partnerships, share knowledge and transparency, commit resources, and have a user-centric approach. And here I think it's also important to have that in the IT architecture context, and we will work with you to see how that can best be done. For the outcome-oriented principles, sustainability is of course key, and in the context of IT architecture, the agile impact and value creation is something we also want to highlight specifically. So in that context, it's very helpful to put the agile methodologies such as Scrum into practice. They deliver tangible results and continuous improvement in short iterations. And we can work with you to kind of put these processes in place and use that approach when setting up infrastructure and architecture, depending on your needs and your current status of work. So we really see the guiding principles also in the context of IT architecture. Yeah, we can skip this one, Luis, I think. And this too. So just coming back to the series of inspiration workshops, we are, as I've already shared, now having the third workshop. We will continue to also bring partners and have the kind of partnership element as cross-cutting. I think it's important also in the IT architecture, and we're very pleased to have partners with us here, countries that can present some of the work that they have already done. So with that, I want to hand over to my colleague Samrat Maski, who is one of the UNSD staff that is specializing on this field and will guide you through the rest of this workshop. Over to you, Samrat.
Thank you, Viveki. And welcome to all the participants today for attending the meeting. Thank you so much. So let's start from the objective of this workshop. First, we will try to simplify some of the data technologies, not just for the IT professionals, but maybe non-IT professionals as well, who are in this data ecosystem, by overviewing some of the technologies and why we use them. After that, we will come a little bit towards things to consider in a data architecture and share our lessons learned from Data for Now work in Colombia and Senegal. It will follow by some of the lessons and experience from various speakers from various countries. And then finally, we will try to group together some evolving set of tools and technologies and trends in the data infrastructure space. Next slide, please, Luis. So let's dive into this demystifying data technologies. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I think it is very important we have a very big picture of what it is. And in our case, we will use this big picture to place data architecture in a data system. By the way, when I say data architecture, I'm using it in a broader context that combines various tools, technologies, and infrastructures that supports the overall data lifecycle. Let me put it this picture in a real life example and maybe try to link our previous two workshops on policy and innovative tools as well through those examples. Imagine building or designing a building without knowing what the purpose of that building would be. For example, would that building be used as a police station or a hospital or a school? So if we know for a fact that that building would be used as a school, then we can add elements of school that will facilitate teaching and learning environments like classrooms, libraries, whiteboards, and so forth, right? So this high-level overview in a data system is provided by data strategy, the data strategy component here. And it is always aligned with a government policy or business model. And this is where our first workshop on policy comes a little bit into play, if you see, not fully, but a little bit. So staying with our example of a school, if let's say a government wants to test and bring a policy to not just strengthen the education system, also, but health of us students. And then they want to, let's say, have all the schools in a particular town have a library and a playground access to the school. If this happens, so to support this, now all the schools would incorporate library and playground in their architecture. And based on this, so when it is incorporated, these incorporations could be, now I would bring our second workshop of innovative tools and technologies. These libraries, playgrounds, and so forth could be some of the innovative tools in our case, like small area estimate and so forth. And then if our data architecture is well designed, we can integrate these libraries and playgrounds and so forth into our architecture very easily. But integrating these facilities, services is just not enough. There should be a mechanism or governance to manage who will access these resources, how, when, and so forth, right? So in data architecture as well, data architecture needs data governance to manage people, process, policies, and culture around data system. At the bottom, when these things are all in place, then we can start to create some purposeful analytics, which could then feed back to the policymakers, and then they could decide how they want to proceed, whether they want to further start whether they want to expand their policy or so forth. So this is a big picture of our system. Next slide, please, Luis. And then this same thing could be viewed as a data value chain as well. And then we would be looking from a production side of it. Next slide, please, Luis. And then I think it is very important for us to understand our data architecture to do this. And then to do this, we will try to see what we already have and what technologies we use and why we need to maybe adopt different technologies. Next slide, please, Luis. I will try to highlight what we already have. We will try to see through a data flow and why different technologies are in use. First, we will start with our very basic and commonly used data flow, where we have various data sources like sensors and surveys, and then we have our expert statisticians and data analysts who would pull these resources, and then manually they would convert it into beautiful statistics and produce the results. It is a really good system, still working perfectly, but like demand for data has grown so exponentially that like our statisticians and data analysts are overburdened by the load of it, and then they are almost in a burnout stage, right? So to support it, next slide, please, Luis. So to support it, maybe we have hired a little bit of software engineers or so forth who automated some of the basic manual processes that our statisticians were doing, like they would pull the data now automatically from the databases, and then transform it into some of the statistics and load it in some transactional database. Now it's a little better for our statisticians, and then they now run in parallel. This system is pretty nice and working, but like turns out the transactional database that we used are really good at storing data and editing the data. But like if we want to create additional analytics out of the existing data we have, and if we want to perform some analytic queries on these transactional database, it becomes very slow, and then many times it doesn't even return results. So this is next slide, please, Luis. This is where the concept of data warehouse comes in. So basically, we just normalize these structures and these data into a data table, and then we link them through schemas and relationships between them, and then it is structured for analytic purposes. So basically, the only difference here is like the transactional database is like really good for doing transactional queries as for small applications, storing and updating data, but data warehouse is really good for performing analytic queries. So now, if in a statistical system, if we have up until here a data warehouse or something, I think it's a very good system already. I think the minimum that is needed is already there. But like if maybe we do not have full data, right? There could be a lot of data gap in our primary data source. Next slide, please, Luis. If there could be a lot of data gap in some data gap in our primary data store, right? Next slide, please, Luis. Luis. Next slide, please, Luis. I think Luis is, I will try to share my screen for this one. Let me share my screen.
So I got it already now. Sorry, Samrat.
Okay.
Let me just go back to the presentation.
Okay.
For that.
It was good. Could you play next slide? One more click.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies.
So thank you. So there we again lost it. But like, let me just continue while it is coming. There could be some gaps in our primary data source, right? So to support it, maybe we are bringing some secondary data like administrative data or some big data like data from satellite or mobile phone or stock market data or administrative data or social media data. There are so many other data comings, right? And we ask our data science team to see if they could classify or predict some of the data that we have and produce or fill some of the indicated data gap. So we are slowly touching towards the experimental statistics at the moment. And then to do this, the data science team, just having a structured data is not enough at this time. So they would request raw data for use. And for that, we can build a custom data pipelines for them. For example, this is one way of doing it. We will pull the data and then transform it based on the data science need. Next slide also, please. Or there is an option of having a data lake. So data lake also is it's the same concept. We will pull the data from various data sources, raw data, and then when we extract those data, and then we will just load it in our storage there. And then after that, when the storage, the things are loaded, we will transform it based on the requirement of the data science team, and then it will they will do some analytics, they will do some machine learning on it, and then maybe classify the data and generate result. If it is mature enough, it will become one of the indicators, and then it could be directly pushed into the data warehouse and so forth. Let me mention that these various data flows are not a maturity model at all. They actually support and complement each other, and then they exist in parallel in a system. And this is a very broad high level view of a data system. And then there is a lot of underlying technologies and so forth, and few of which maybe we will hear from few of our speakers today as well. With this, I will request Luis to maybe start a small poll here to see how data flow is, what type of data flow do you use in your system? So I would, yes. So Luis has recently started a data poll. If you can see it in your screen, I would request you to first maybe see what type of data flow exists in your system. If you could select in the polls. So the first question is, what data flow structure are in use in your countries or offices? So the first option is manual data flow, manual data processing. Second is automation with transactional database. Third is automation with data warehouse. Fourth is custom ETLs. And fifth is automation with data lake. These are multiple choice question, and then there is a possibility that your office already has at least one of the data flow in your system, or multiple of them. And then the second question is, if you would know where these data pipelines are hosted they hosted on premises? Like, are they physically located in your private cloud in your organization, or they are on the cloud, or they are in between hybrid between cloud and on-premise, both of them. So thank you so much for participating in the polls. I think we still have a lot of manual data process. As I said, like, they were all parallel processes. And then many of us still are using a transactional database in our system. And from the result, we see like 11 out of 20, 11 out of 20 are in manual process. 9 out of 20 are in transactional database, follows by 8 in data warehouse, 4 in custom ETL, and 3 already have data lake and data warehouse they already use. So they could be actually running in parallel. And then many of us, like many of us in the where the data pipeline is hosted, are in physical on premises, and only few are in hybrid mode. So I think it's a really good understanding of where our system lies and what type of processes that follows. Thank you so much. And then I will pass this floor to Luis to continue with our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samrat, and hello everybody. Just to double check that you see the screen, I'll speak now about a little bit about some strategy and governance considerations, things that we should consider when designing new data architectures. So one of those is the aspect of oversight, accountability, and compliance. So the development of a modern IT architecture, a modern data architecture, must be in line with the existing oversight and accountability mechanisms in your organizations, in our organizations, so that the data remains secure and privacy is protected, and this happens in every stage of the data value. Data life cycle or the data value chain that Samrat was mentioning at the beginning, and the decisions concerning this architecture must comply with all applicable legal regulations, even beyond that, with ethical guidelines, legitimate stakeholders' expectations. So this oversight, accountability, and compliance is a very important part of the governance dimension that Samrat has been highlighting in his introduction. Also, something that has an impact on what types of architectures are feasible and can be implemented in a particular organization are the procurement policies that determine the process of acquiring new types of systems and types of infrastructure. So the procurement of IT services, of data systems, and other types of solutions relating to this storage, processing, and sharing of data is complex and time-consuming, and it has to be taken into account. And there are many different alternatives, open source or proprietary, that need to be evaluated. Advantages and disadvantages need to be weighed, and along many different dimensions. So what are the risks of vendor lock-in against the cost of acquisition and operation, maintainability, sustainability, etc. Also, these decisions need to be made in the context of the broader data ecosystem, not in a vacuum. And so should take into account the types of technology and data infrastructure that is currently being used by external data providers and by external data users, with a view to ensure interoperability across the broader data ecosystem. And it's important to continuously monitor what new technologies are being adopted by other members of the national statistical system, and to assess the potential benefits and risks of being early adopters, also against the cost of missing out, so the opportunity cost of missing out. A factor that also determines what types of architectures are appropriate for a specific situation are the staff knowledge and skills. So the ability to integrate multiple data sources and to generate valuable data products using new technologies depends on the technical skills of the team members. So the choice of architectures need to take into account existing skills, and also the feasibility of building those skills over time. And the architecture needs to be fit for purpose. This means that the architecture must support many different types of use cases, as Samrat was saying in his diagram. Different types of data flows need to coexist that involve both structured and unstructured data, that encompass traditional statistical production processes along more innovative data science applications. And so the new technologies will not displace or will not be a substitute for use cases that are still valid, the traditional use cases. Many important data sets that statistical offices work with have very well-defined schemas, can be enforced and work with in traditional data warehouse environments. And so the technology needs to be fit for the purpose at hand, and it's not an end in itself. And finally, I would just like to mention that this work in deciding how to build more modern architectures that are fit for purpose should take advantage of existing frameworks. It doesn't have to start from scratch. No. In particular, I would highlight the common statistical production architecture that helps statistical organizations create interoperable tools to share within and between statistical organizations. It's a useful framework that also could be helpful in organizing this conversation, along many others that you can see here on the screen. And just not to take too much time from the most important part of the seminar, which is getting to know country experiences, I just will go very quickly over some of the lessons learned from this Data for Now initiative that we have undertaken in partnership with Colombia, DANE Colombia, and ANSD Senegal. Those are the two countries. Those are two countries with which we have been working very closely in supporting how they develop their own data architectures, modernize the infrastructure, and we have drawn some lessons from that. So the background to that is a project funded by the Italian government that has allowed us to support the modernization of the IT architecture for statistical production and ANSD in Senegal. And the goal has been to help ensure that the necessary tools are in place so that different types of data, different sources can be easily accessed and used for data science and advanced analytic applications that aim to deliver data in priority areas identified by the countries. So the project has mobilized expert consultants, for instance, who have provided guidance on architectural decisions and have delivered trainings aimed to strengthen internal capabilities to maintain and operate those new tools. And so some of the lessons, I will go quickly through them. First, I would say there are no silver bullets. The right architecture solution will be different for every NSO, and even in the same NSO at different stages, the architecture will be evolving together with the number and volume and the nature of the data that is being used, together with the skill sets of the team members, and together with the portfolio of use cases and specific needs of final data users. So there is need for a comprehensive architectural thinking and to have different models and patterns on the table. Data governance is key. Again, data architecture must support quality, data security, auditing controls and mechanisms along the entire life cycle. There is need for automated quality assurance. It's also the access for different roles needs to be well governed so that people access all the data they need, but also do not access the data they are not authorized to access. Also, the solutions need to be sustainable and scalable. New data architecture initiatives should include the deployment of automation and orchestration tools, so that not everything has to be managed manually. The idea is that there is need to be able to scale as the volume of work increases. And the sustainability also in the sense of the cost and the budget needed to grow. So the growth in the data that is processed and stored and managed does not justify a parallel growth in infrastructure and technology costs. More on the human aspect, I would like to stress the importance of having cross-functional teams in this type of projects that aim to modernize IT architectures and technologies that combine both technology experts with statistical production experts. And these type of initiatives require open communication and empowering all team members to make decisions as they learn and as they experiment with new approaches. And as Vivek mentioned at the very beginning, one of the key principles is agility. And for in the aspect of technology, this is key. It's very helpful to have this ability to deliver results in short iterations, to show the value of tools that are being introduced, and also remaining flexible to change course and to quickly learn from mistakes and to evolve according to changing circumstances. So this is not the path towards modernizing a data architecture is not a straight line. It has to go through iterations, through learnings, through quick experiments that sometimes fail, and they are not failures in themselves if as a result of the experiment we draw lessons and can improve future developments. So with that, I would like to hand over back to Samrat, who will be introducing our country participants.
Thank you so much, Luis. I think it is really important, like what Luis recently mentioned, to build on the existing frameworks, I think, and then also like really well taken points, like there's no silver bullet, and then every country would have their own experience to share. So as we go towards our next session on sharing of country experience, first we will have Uruguay, where Uruguay National Institute of Statistics, we have Federico Segui, Deputy Director General of Ionic, and then I think Daniel Blanc also would be presenting and sharing their experience. Please, Federico, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Samrat. Sorry about the noise and music. I'm not at the office. I'm not at home. In fact, I'm abroad waiting at the airport. So sorry about the noise. I hope you hear me well. In fact, I will turn my camera off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Press the down arrow button.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Maybe you can click on that button. Oh, okay. Yes. Thank you very much. I will talk about the integrated system of statistical registers and surveys, SDGs, that we have implemented at the NSI of Uruguay. It is not just a central database, it's not just an information system. The SDGs is a system in the broadest sense of the term, made up of a set of interrelated elements that works as a whole. It's a conceptual system, a management system, and an information system implemented through the geostatistical data warehouse. The SDG is based on three fundamental pillars: people, processes, and technology, aligned with the NSI strategy. The SDG system is based on a series of key elements, which perhaps are not the most visible. Perhaps the most visible part of this system is the data warehouse. The basis of the system, which supports the SDG, is the conceptual and methodological framework of the system. We also have a very important element, that is the generic statistical registers business process model that we have named GSRBPM, because it is an adaptation of the GSBPM model developed by UNECE. And another fundamental element, that is the DNA of the data warehouse system, is the metadata management, and especially the master data management. Next slide, please. Let's see the current status of the NSI of Uruguay related to administrative data for statistical purposes. The NSI periodically receives more than 400 data sets from several administrative sources. Our approach is to access data as the data providers have it, no matter the format or transmedia. Don't want our data providers to have any additional burden, at least for this stage. We receive data at microdata level with national ID numbers to identify each case, people or enterprises. Then transformation and quality checks processes are run by the NSI to transform administrative registers and administrative variables into statistical ones. Also, the national ID number is replaced by a statistical ID, a random number, used later to link with other statistical registers into the system. For these processes, we use an ETL and data integration tool called Pentaho PDI for extracting, transforming quality check record linkage and loading data into the data warehouse. Next slide, please. We have built an integrated system of statistical registers based on the Scandinavian countries model. This is composed by 3 base registers: population, business, and real estate. Besides, the base registers are linked among them and with other registers of the system based, sorry about that, based on key variables like the statistical ID number of person, statistical ID number of business, and the other scope. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the population registers. The NSI is member of the CIAS initiative of the Ministry of Social Development. This integrated information system on social area is fed by 62 administrative registers from 15 institutions like Social Security Authority, Ministry of Social Development, Dwellings, Agriculture, Health, Public and Private Health Services, Public and Private Education Services, among others. It is not just a register of social programs and beneficiaries, but it integrates records of people through record linkage by national ID number from different government agencies, the administrative sources. It is a big information system or central database created mainly for policymaking, monitoring, and public management purposes. Then it is also used for statistical purposes like the NSI does. We use different methods and channels to get the administrative data. We are trying to use the web services by the government interoperability platform as the main channel, but we are also receiving data in text or Excel files by FTP protocol. Next slide, please. The government interoperability platform, RedUI, that is the name, is a high-speed optical fiber network with SOA design. That's not only a technical framework, but also a legal one. There are more than 90 government agencies that are connected to the platform. More than 600,000 daily transactions are processed through the platform. It has more than 240 web services, more than 1,700 procedures. For instance, the National Electronic Health Record is there, birth e-certificates, exchange of electronic files, among others. Next slide, please. Here we have the architecture of the data warehouse, which is made up of 4 layers. The first layer is data entry. The next layer is for transformation and integration. Then the centralized updating and aggregation in the data warehouse. And the final layer for data analysis and presentation. Next slide, please. I think I'm gonna skip this slide. Next. I think I don't have time to tell you more details, just to tell you that Kimba's star model has been used to design the data warehouse database. Next, please. And as I mentioned before, we use ETL tools like the open source software Pentaho PDI. Next, please. Next. Sorry, but I think we don't have enough time. Well, here we have that, what I was saying at the beginning. It's a model that has been adapted from the original UNECE model that we call GSRBPM. Next slide, please. Another important element that I mentioned at the beginning is master data management and metadata documentation. We use a software called Master Data, which is based on the ISO 11179 standard for a metadata record system. Next, please. Next steps are finish consolidating the data warehouse, continuous improvement of the data warehouse, register-based census pilot test, incorporate administrative data from the private sector, developing the national data strategy, and implement access to the data warehouse for the National Statistical System members and researchers. I think that's the final slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Federico. This was really useful presentation, and then I really hope it will motivate and inspire many of us towards a modern data infrastructure. And then I think Uruguay is one of the country where they have a very mature data system. So now I will move to our second speaker from Ecuador. Our colleagues from National Institute of Statistics and Census in Ecuador, and Angela Chu. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Angela Chuyiza, and then Liliana Alan. Please, floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of Administrative Records Directorate of National Institute of Statistics and Censuses from Ecuador, let me allow to extend a welcome to this presentation. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about the technological solution that we have at Ionic, which is led by the team of processing of Administrative Records Directorate. The next slide. Okay, maybe if during the presentation you have any question or something is not clear, please feel free to interrupt me. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Ionic technological solution. The next slide, please. Okay, in this sheet, we present in a global way the three great technological solutions that we currently have in our institution. The first one is the collection solution, which refers to the interoperability solutions in which it allows us to collect data from administrative sources with public entities, such as civil registries, social security, internal revenue, etc. In this solution, we have point-to-point connections through SFTP files, materialized views, and ETLs too. The number two is processing solutions, that once the data has been captured, it's migrated to processing environments based on big data type technology, specifically Hadoop. In this processing environment, we have what we know as processing phases, in which an administrative record is transformed into a statistical record, which is ready for use in subsequent analysis and investigations by the Institute. It should also be mentioned that the data is available with all the respective confidentiality measures. where we generate our own codes, which replace the direct identification variables of a person, such as identifier, names and surnames, gender, date, and place of birth. The number 3 is analysis solutions. Once the information makes pseudonymization is arranged in 3 environments for analysis, which are: the first one is the processing labs. That is the processing laboratory. It is a physical space in the institute with physical and logical security, in which the process and pseudonymized databases from administrative records are loaded, where analysis and researchers can access to carry out their investigations, and the end only aggregate information that are tabulated can be kept and used to complete their investigations. In this way, we ensure people's information is kept confidential and used appropriately. The number 2 is the business intelligence tools that allows presenting research results in a friendly and intuitive way. In addition, information cubes are available that allow the researcher to carry out their own information, cross-referencing, and generate custom-made tabulations. And finally is the specialized analysis. In this space, a computational cluster is configured that allows the use of analysis applications such as RStudio, Stata, and Spark, where with the amount of data is no longer a limitation for the investigations. The next slide, please. Okay, the first component, this is the data collection. The first component of data collection is born from an institutional need, from which the information is established and transferred to the institute for statistical purposes. This process is divided into 4 macro activities. The first one is to establish the collection. For what is needed, certain legal conditions such as an agreement, and also determine a technical context for the capture and storage. In this phase, the transfer scenarios are defined once the means and modes are established. The transfer of information is carried out with certain checks with the source, such as information size, number of records, list of variables, in order to ensure that updated information is received. Once the information is verified, the next step is to store a repository for further processing. For this stage, technological resources are required. It is so with the data collect and store, the collection is complete, and finally the metadata is saving in administrative records collection history. The next slide, please. Okay, once the collect data is available, it is processed, in which it consists of 9 macro activities, or known as processing phases, which are applied to administrative records in order to convert them into statistical records. For profiling errors and news in the structure of the data are identified for each variable. For example, the ID, that is the unique identification number of the person, comply with the valid structure. In the correction form, errors are correct in the variables identified in the profiling. For example, in the ID, in the case of provinces that start with 0, the verification digit is completed at pass. In the standardization, the different categories of the qualitative variables of the different sources are homologous. The accuracy verifies the identity of an entity, be it a person or a company, using probabilistic and deterministic methods with primary sources. The next is the change identification that identifies modifications over time of the records of a source, which can be additions, modifications, and removals. The next step is the coherence, that is the data validations between variables are carried out to verify that the data don't have contradictions. For example, marital status, if it's a younger, under 18. The next one is uniqueness. The records are checked to make sure that they are unique and duplicates are eliminated. Integration is the next one, runs either to create historical tables or generate thematic records through integration of various administrative sources. Pseudonymization is a set of techniques that reduce the probability of identifying people or companies in order to carry out analysis takes without breaching statistical confidentiality. In this phase, the direct identification variables are replaced by a unique code of the institute, which is stored in a correspondence table. The next slide, please. Okay. Once you have information transformed into a statistical record and subsequently pseudonymized, you can use different data visualization and analysis tools that adapt to the need for analysis and research that can finalize in a publication. These data are available for use in the information processing laboratory, used for the analysis of the producers by different statistical and processing systems, and also by the visualizers like Power BI, R, Shiny, etc. So that is all about regarding the technology and solutions that Ionic has from the collection, transformation, analysis, and subsequent presentation of information, fulfilling the information cycle until its final consumption. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, and thank you for all listening, and it was a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liliana. It was a really nice presentation, and thank you for sharing Ecuador's experience. For Q&A sessions, I would now ask our colleague Daniela Figuera from UNSD to moderate the Q&A session, and if there is any question, please, Daniela.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you especially to Federico and Liliana from Uruguay and Ecuador for sharing these interesting experiences with us. As you have seen, these are very interesting examples of how infrastructure architecture can be implemented and enhanced. Now I would like to open the floor for some questions and answers related to the two presentations from Uruguay and Ecuador. So please feel free to raise your hand or write your questions in the chat. You can write it in English or in Spanish as you prefer.
In Spanish, please.
Yes, please go ahead, and I can translate for you. Puedes preguntar y traduzco por ti.
Parece que no tenemos preguntas.
If someone also wants to ask about the presentation before the country presentations about the IT infrastructure that Luis and Samrat have done, also you can ask questions to UNSD team. Okay, I think if we don't have any questions for now for these presentations from Uruguay and Ecuador, maybe we can continue with the presentations from Gambia and Sierra Leone, and then we can have another Q&A session.
Daniela, I see a question from Vietnam in the chat.
Oh yes, thank you, Luis. So Vietnam is asking our Ecuador colleagues on how long do you process data from administrative records? ¿Por cuánto tiempo Ecuador procesa los datos de los datos administrativos?
¿Puedo responder en español? ¿O?
Sí, claro.
Sí. Muchas gracias. Más o menos la dirección se estableció en el año 2014 Entonces, desde el año 2015-2016 hemos venido justamente estableciendo todo lo que acabamos de presentar y desde ese entonces ya venimos procesando justamente los datos de registros administrativos, que ya vendrían a ser una cosa de que casi sería de 6 a 7 años.
Okay, so for the Vietnam colleagues, Ecuador has established its team in 2014. So from that year, they have been working on the establishment of the process data. So they have done it for around 6 and 7 years. Do we have another question for Ecuador or Uruguay? Yes, Victor, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daniela. That was a fantastic presentation from both Uruguay and Ecuador. I was just thinking, well, if it would be perhaps useful for learning purposes for the other statistical offices here to learn from, or perhaps hear from Ecuador and Uruguay, if there was, and of course, given the fantastic, layout, the architecture that you showed during your presentation was really fantastic, and to see that level of maturity. So the question is, obviously there was the technology and perhaps the digital transformation policy that enabled you to do all of this. What led to the development of, those policies? What were the key challenges that you had when developing and perhaps implementing that policy? I think that will really help other statistical offices here to understand what challenges you went through in developing that technology, and digital transformation policy, and the kind of challenges that you had and how you overcame those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Federico, I don't know if you want to start responding the question in Spanish or English is fine. And then we give the floor to our colleagues in Ecuador.
Hi, everyone. Federico had to go, so I'm going to be here in representation of the Institute of Uruguay. Sorry, Daniela, just because of the audio, would you mind, Victor, to rephrase the question because I don't quite understand it, or maybe Daniela translated?
Okay.
To have
I could simplify it. I was just trying to know if there was a digital or a technology, transformation policy that you developed that helped you to eventually put together that data architecture infrastructure, and what were the challenges you had when developing and implementing, that policy.
Bien, Daniela, por un tema de traducción se refiere, Víctor, a los desafíos del desarrollo de sistemas y políticas para tratar con este proceso de arquitectura.
Exactamente.
Well, in Policies Matters, we are in the most difficult field was about the security and the protection of the data, because some public organizations had some questions about it or were skeptical about it, and we have to develop security systems to ensure them that the data will be protected and used only for statistical methods. That development was all inside the institute and was quite challenged in matter of working hours, let's say. Let's put it that way. That could be the union of both things, because we don't develop another another policy changes in Uruguay about the protection and the management of data. But as Federico put it in the slide, we have the intention to go in that way, but right now we don't have any achievement to record right now. So it could be a depth for all this process.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I don't know if maybe our colleagues Angel or Liliana would like to add something on this question. Ángel, la pregunta de Víctor es sobre los procesos o digamos si hubo alguna política específica o los procesos que ustedes debieron pasar para implementar esta infraestructura tecnológica en Ecuador y cuáles fueron los principales desafíos o digámoslo también obstáculos a los que se enfrentaron.
Ok, bueno, y me disculpo una vez más, ¿no? por el idioma. Ahí le voy a molestar, porfa, que me dio traduciendo solo esta parte. Bueno, creo que los principales desafíos cuando iniciamos, digamos, con el uso de los registros administrativos, primero es el aspecto legal, porque siempre, o sea, hay que normarnos, o sea, justamente cómo se va a intercambiar los datos con otros institutos, o con otras instituciones del Estado. Entonces, siempre ahí nos toca ver, o sea, si es que se hacen convenios, acuerdos de transferencia, si es que existen justamente el aparataje legal para que nos pueda ayudar a transferir esa información. Eso sería lo primero. No sé si hasta ahí primero llega.
Sí. One of the main challenges that addressed Ecuador in this process was mainly on the legal aspect of the administrative records, because they have to manage and agree on how are they going to exchange this data with different ministries. So for instance, they have to choose if they do kind of agreements, MIUs, or transfer agreements. So the main challenge that they faced was the legal aspect.
Ok, el segundo reto, o sea, que tuvimos, perdón, sería en este caso la gran cantidad de datos que representan los registros administrativos, porque al hacer un registro administrativo, en este caso, o sea, no nació con un fin estadístico, sino que nació con el fin, o sea, de trabajar sobre el modelo, en este caso, de negocio de cierta institución. Entonces, la cantidad de datos siempre es inmensa, o sea, no es una cantidad, o sea, pequeña. Entonces, poder procesar esto requiere ya justamente entrar, o sea, temas tecnológicos ya bastante fuertes. Entonces, ese también fue uno de los principales desafíos, ¿no? Hacer pruebas y error hasta que lleguemos a tener, o sea, una infraestructura que soporte el procesamiento de grandes cantidades de información. Y para esto nos tocó hacer full pruebas y error hasta llegar a un punto donde ya tenemos lo que actualmente ya es una infraestructura, digamos, bastante estable.
Okay, the second challenge they faced was the large amount of data that represents these administrative records, because this large amount of data requires entering a technology, a large technology that is able to process this large amount of data. Yes. Okay, muchísimas gracias, Ángel, and thank you very much, Ángel, for your responses. I think we could move on now, and thank you very much thank you very much, everyone, for your interesting questions. I think we can move on to the second part of the presentations from countries. So now I will give the floor to Samrat, so we can continue with the presentations from Gambia and Sierra Leone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniela. So let me invite our colleagues from Gambia Bureau of Statistics and Lamin Diba. He's a principal statistician from Gambia Bureau of Statistics. And then this presentation will be jointly presented with Ayumi Ara, who is a project assistant professor from University of Tokyo. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Also thank the previous speakers for very brilliant presentations. We are going to present our country case in the use of mobile phone data in partnership with University of Tokyo. And then this was funded by the World Bank. The presentation will be very short. Can you go to the next slide, please? So basically, the idea of use of the mobile phone data came as a result of interest in using complementary sources of data to complement the sources of data that we have in producing official statistics. As a result, we had to engage our partners to discuss the way forward, including the World Bank and the PURA, which is the regulatory authority for the GSM companies. And we had to make sure we were very much in line with the data protection procedures that were already in place at the time. And then when the event got underway, we sought for support financially from World Bank, and then World Bank also had to reach out to University of Tokyo for technical assistance. Next slide. Yeah, so basically the reason why we needed to use the mobile phone data to complement the other data sources is to produce timely and high quality data to be able to assist the National Statistics Office in producing statistics for policymakers. And like I said, also we had interest in measuring internal movement of people because we had data gaps when it comes to internal migration, because those data are only available during the censuses, and because we have 10 years gap between censuses, we had the data gaps when it comes to internal migration. And we thought the mobile phone data will be able to help us to complement the internal migration data. And as a result, we sought to that. But again, we also wanted to use the same data to try to see how best we can normalize the remittances figures based on call data records that are coming from abroad. But during the period we had COVID, and that changed the whole scenario. The whole purpose of the use of mobile phone data at the time changed to using the information to be able to track people's movement and see how COVID could be spreading. And of course, this yielded a lot of earlier results with, like I said, technical support from University of Tokyo. Next slide. So the reason why we brought in PURA, which is the regulatory authority, is because they have mandate over the MNOs, the mobile network organizations, and that eased our access to data, because the infrastructure was established at the PURA premises, and access was given to data by two MNOs. These were Afrocell and Comium, and then the methods the purpose of the data collection or the analysis was conveyed to University of Tokyo, and our interests motivated and informed the methods that they are going to apply to be able to produce the data that we need. However, there are data protection issues around the mobile phone data because it is individual data records. As a result, we had to see the legal framework that existed to be able to protect people from being exposed to any other malpractices. So we were guided by these data protection principles that existed. Of course, we have a legal framework that is being developed at the national level to protect people's data, but that is not yet ratified. So we only relied on the law that existed at PURA to be able to protect people's data, and that gave the mobile phone companies, the assurance, the protection to be able to give data to PURA. Next slide. So basically, the data protection issues that were ensured were that the individual identifiable information will not be displayed, and also the data will be aggregated to make sure that the confidentiality is strictly adhered to. And we also try to assure the mobile phone networks that the data that is being taken from them is only going to be used for statistical purposes and nothing else. And because they are legally licensed by PURA, that is also another assurance that we use to let them know that the data is going to be housed at the PURA premises and not at the National Statistics Office. Next slide. Yeah, so at least at this stage, I would want to hand over to Ayumi to continue from here. Back to you.
Thank you, Ami. So now I explain about the data pipeline in place in the Gambia. So data pipeline or infrastructure is crucial for utilizing mobile phone data, and it mainly requires 3 points there. So given that the financial resources is limited in the Gambia, efficient resource allocation for managing large-scale data is necessary. And also the system needs to be sustainable for using and managing, and also capacity enhancement for producing statistics and managing data for new data sources is necessary. So here is the concept and the approach for the data pipeline in the Gambia. So the system, current status in the Gambia is that the system is installed and some fundamental tool for processing CDR mobile phone data are already in place. And we are currently constructing tools for computing migration statistics and discuss the preliminary results. And in this process, we already have provided training to PURA because they are hosting the server for processing the data. And once the relevance of the results of the analysis and robustness of methodology is confirmed, we also planning to provide training to GBOS to handle the data as well. So this figure summarizes the role of stakeholders and data flow. So raw CDR data, mobile phone data can be accessed by the MNO because the data is very confidential. They are the one who can access to the data and can de-identify the data. So once the data is de-identified, was anonymized, the data is provided to the regulator. Because we have access to more than one mobile phone network operator, the data need to be handled by regulator because these two are competitors. So PURA or regulator maintains the system for processing the mobile phone data and produce CDR mobile phone data aggregates. And mobile phone data aggregates is provided to GBOS, and they conduct analysis using the aggregates and the interpretation for policy purposes. So this is the data flow. And this is the structure of the data pipeline. So the key component of the data pipeline is the data management system. which is built based on open source framework. And in this system, we also have open source analytical tool, which is already set in place to process the data. So in our system, open source is really important because of scalability, replicability, and transparency. So the system is based on open source framework, and Apache Hadoop is installed as base infrastructure, and managed automation is data is automatically processed partially. And this system is also adjusted to run Python program as well. And also we install some open source analytical tool called MobiPack for data quality assurance and computing some origin and destination matrices, and also running some open source tool developed by World Bank for COVID-19 mobility indicators. And this system also can is tool developed by other parties can be also used in the system. And these tools are all open source, so that the methodology we implemented can be published and can be reviewed by other parties, and also replicated by other parties. As a lesson learned, so involving end user, here in this case, the National Statistical Office is important for developing process, because of the statistical output need to meet their need. And we expect that existing partnership and data pipeline help strengthen preparedness for better use of CDR data. Particularly in our case, we first worked on the internal migration, but because of that, we already have system in place at the onset of COVID. So we are quickly shifted our purpose of the data analysis to support a response to COVID-19. And the current experience also could be a platform for further collaboration with other non-traditional data producers. But there are some major challenges for sustainability. So there is a potential reluctance for MNO for continued collaboration, because it is somehow providing data and extracting the data and pseudonymizing data, and also providing data is some burden. So we are hoping to do the automation process if possible, but it requires some there are some financial constraints. And capacity at NSO for further processing the result production is also needed. So we are still planning to do training, but further and continuous training will be necessary with the support of like us, University of Tokyo, or World Bank. And also automation analysis flow to reduce burden is really necessary, not only for MNO, but also between regulator and National Statistical Office. So that is the end of our presentation. And here we have some papers at the Gambia project paper and data pipeline paper, and also guiding principle published by with the UN task team on the use of mobile phone data for official statistics. So if you are interested, please feel free to access this paper later. This is the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Ayumi. And I mean, this was a really great presentation, and focusing on innovative data source, and then also sustainability along with public-private partnership. Thank you for sharing. Before going to Q&A session, we have one more presentation from Statistics Sierra Leone. So I would invite Theopolis Faust, the Director of Data Science Division, for his presentation. Theopolis, floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you please share the presentation? Or I can share it from my own side here. Hello, everyone. Tina?
Yes, please, I'm here.
Okay, can you please?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the previous. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for all the previous presentation. So this is a presentation from Statistical Clementina Akran and Director Theophilus Bloodforth. So of course, this is the leadership. Professor Osman Sankor is the Statistician General of Statistics Sierra Leone. Next slide, please. And then this is the Statistician General's winner vision. Next slide, please. This is the presentation outline. Next slide, please. And our presentation today is just going to be, we're going to focus on the IT architecture we use for the midterm population and housing census, the 2021 midterm and housing census population and housing census survey, which we just completed. Next, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, the StatSL on-premise network and internet connection basically support a 10 gig internet speed, which the gateway will support. And we introduced this approach in order to support data transmission within our on-premise environment. There are a lot of challenges when you do not have the necessary bandwidth or throughput to transmit or to do network installation. So our network that we use for the midterm census population support a 10 gig gateway. Next slide, please. Our server design architecture support both private and public cloud. And we decided to use an IP-BGP advertisement route simply because in some cases you face internet issue from the fiber termination coming into our country. So we decided to establish all servers that are running critical applications that need to be accessed from field staff to be advertised to our internet service provider, our local internet service provider. So in case of any eventuality, they can be able to access resources on premises without going through the internet. So this was just a mitigation in case of the main fiber connection cable is down. Next slide, please. Hybrid server design. Basically for high security or in case of hardware failure, our server is running in high availability. The two servers communicate in heartbeats. In case of any eventuality or any failure, the passive servers will automatically kick to ensure that services are up and application can be recovered. We use this strategy just in case to minimize risk if there is any, and we can be able to continue our data collection process during the fieldwork exercise. Next slide, please. Security consideration. When we want to do our census, the key things that we will focus on is how we can be able to secure privacy and our system. So the key things that we take into consideration was audit trail, access control, encryption, and fault tolerance. When we have all this in place, these were the security measures, key security measures that we put in place before we started our census data collection. Next slide, please. Secure mobile data connection. Our system was not open to everyone who have internet access to their on their phone to transmit data. So we have a secure private VPN and APN to our mobile data service provider, the telco services, field staff from the field will be able to transmit or sync data to our master servers through a specific APN that they have, that we give access or grant access to our servers. These are all security measures to see how we can secure data transmission from the field to our servers. Next slide, please. Encryption mechanism. We use SSL certificates, which we use to encrypt data through our browser, so we can able to encrypt and decrypt to a secure means, so data cannot be easily decrypted by a schema. Next slide, please. Application use. The copy application that we use for the midterm sensors was developed by a Ghanaian consultant called Leo. What we did, we used the CS Pro Android data entry application, which we use to collect data at every level within the country. This application was developed, and the key things that we take into consideration was the consistency and validation check using a CS Pro Android developed by the Ghanaian consultants. And the data science team was trained, and they were able to train the TOT, who eventually end up to train the end users who will go to the field to collect data. The CS Pro menu and GIS integration. We were able to integrate all GIS resources into the CS Pro application. This helped us to have a complete coverage and structure of the enumerator, and data were collected, and we are able to automate every process that we want to automate. Basically, how we can able to drill down into areas that field staff need to collect data. The CS Web Server. The application was a client server-based architecture that we use to collect our sensors data in the field, which basically the field staff were able to send data through their supervisors, and their supervisors were able to send data directly to our server. Data synchronization was not open to all the field staff. We have the enumerators who collect the data, and then they have the basic consistency check that they can use to validate what they have collected, and another layer of check by the supervisor. After all these verifications, the supervisor will be able to sync the data through to the central master server. Next slide, please. Data synchronization. The process of synchronizing data from the field work was basically Bluetooth. You can sync through Dropbox file server, an FTP file server, or directly sync with the CS Web Server. Next slide, please. This was the approach used for our data synchronization. To sync data to the server, supervisor should have access to the internet. Despite we provided internet connectivity for all field staff, but those who can able to send data to the central server are only the supervisor. After the enumerator collected the information in the field, they will have to sync with the supervisor. The supervisor will have to do some check on the data to check what they have collected, if there are any data gap, and then if everything requirement is met, then they will have to send data directly to the server. And basically, the application also supports an online and offline work, because basically in Sierra Leone, we have challenges in some areas when it comes to internet connectivity. So the application will also able to work when you are offline, and then able to sync when you have access to internet. Supervisor sync data to server via a secure private APN connection. Next slide, please. Tablet provisioning. We were able to provision 16,000 tablets in 7 days, and this exercise was a round-the-clock exercise. This was able to accomplish as a result of the network speed, and the application was developed by the Economic Commission for Africa. We were trained by them, and then we are able to carry out this exercise. This process involved basic human actions, the actors who are involved, and some process were involved. With the help of this process, definitely we were able to achieve 16,000 tablets being provisioned for the fieldwork exercise. And it was so robust, and this was something that we always have to say thanks to the UNECA team, because this was like a plus for you to have any process being done in lesser than 7 days, to install all the application and required tools for data collection will virtually impossible. With the aid of the provisioning system, we are able to accomplish these tasks very easily. Next slide, please. The monitoring tool that we use for the midterm sensors was the sensors dashboard. The sensors dashboard is a robust monitoring tool that provides an end-to-end reporting at every level. And some of the key areas that we are focusing on was the performance monitoring. How can we be able to monitor enumerators at every level, geographic, administrative level, and what data they are collecting, if there are any errors. So we were able to probe into the data collected by enumerator from the field. So that gives us more efficient and high quality in our data collection. We were also able to monitor work completion. In the case when you have so many people out there in the fields, you have people who basically will not want to work efficiently. So we can able to push them to know their progress on what they are doing. Duplication. We do not wait until after everything is finished. We can able to identify data duplication and able to correct it on real time through the sensors dashboard. Field staff who were not able to complete their work, maybe they have partial work saved, it can be seen and noticed directly from the sensors dashboard. We were able also to check on real-time performance for every enumerator's supervisor in the field. Areas that were not visited or visited, we were able to check on all those areas. So this helps us to be very efficient in our data collection in the whole entire census process. The dashboard basically was not connected directly to the CS web server. We have a breakout database, which we gave some basic permission to on certain tables. And on the certain tables, we were able to have the required field that we want to see in the census dashboard. Next slide, please. We do face challenges, and one of the major challenges that we faced during this process was having the required hardware requirement to analyze our data for data analysis. Specialized data scientists workstation was a challenge, but my colleague Clementina Akram will take us through how we eventually have to get to work around that. Over to you, Clementina.
Thank you, Director. So with my role as a National IT Coordinator during the census, we realized that, of course, I realized that we required some additional support regarding our IT technology infrastructure. And so as a partner of the GPSDD, I approached Victor Ohurogu about our current IT needs. A return with positive news saying your request is so timely. It spoke about their new partnership with NVIDIA Corporation, which together with its technology ecosystem partner, Future Tech Enterprises Incorporation, is providing high capacity data science workstations and with data server software, relevant appurtenances, and data science capacity development to 5 selected NSOs undertaking censuses, while another 5 NSOs each are to receive high-grade laptops and desktops with software and training capacity. And he said Sierra Leone can definitely be one of the early recipients. This initiative will provide capacity support and training even after the deployment. And this will be achieved through a series of training leveraging on NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute's training teaching kits, training at ECA webinars, sharing insights from their research and development, and field teams to promote pathways to data science and artificial intelligence for statistical development. And so we had series of meetings on assessing our current IT infrastructure architecture, because for us, we had unique specific needs. We're so looking forward to receiving these servers before the completion of the 2021 midterm population and housing census data collection exercise. But unfortunately, due to the recent global crisis, the double crisis of a global microchip shortage that had heavily impacted the electronics and computing industry, and the ongoing global shipping challenges causing supply chain disruptions, we didn't receive them on the agreed dates. But now we are so happy, we are so excited because NVIDIA identified an interim solution which includes the immediate deployment of a hardware, Dell 7550 laptop with an NVIDIA RTX 500, 16 gig and gigabytes, and complete with data science software stack optimized for parallel processing under Ubuntu 20.04 operating system that's been made available in this very month of March. With this, we can begin to work on our preliminary data science task until the original EGX data servers arrive. Thank you. Dr. Theo.
Thank you very much, Tina. Over.
Thank you so much, Theophilus and Clementina. And apologies, I at the beginning forgot to introduce Clementina. She's head of open data and visualization section in Stats Sierra Leone. We are running a little behind time, but I would like to invite now our colleague from GPSDD, Victor, to moderate the session. Please, Victor.
Thank you so much, Samra. And I want to thank the speakers from the Gambia, Lamine, and of course, the professor from University of Tokyo, and friends from Sierra Leone, Theophilus and Clementina. It was really good listening to the two great presentations from the two NSOs. Fantastic work that's been done. I was quite excited about the mobility data by the Gambia, and of course how that Sierra Leone also had deployed mobile, devices for their midterm census. So just a few questions. Many of you who were also listening may have questions. Please do feel free to raise your hand. You can use the raise hand function, or you may want to type in your questions from the chat function. And we then could have friends, from the two NSOs answer those questions. So please feel free, raise your hand or send in your questions. Let me wait for 30 seconds to see if anyone is raising his hand. Okay, so while we're waiting for people to sort of gather their thoughts and put out their questions, I may want to shoot one or two questions quickly to our team in Gambia. That was a fantastic work you had done. And a lot of statistical offices, I know in Africa, are keen on accessing and using mobile data for official statistics for different use cases, from internal migration to GDP forecasting, and of course, one of the greatest cases we saw was COVID during, the response to COVID last year. Just one or two questions to Lamine. So Lamine, is there a policy framework, perhaps also supported by your statistical law, that could enable you in a much longer term to sustainably develop your experience in accessing and using, mobile data for official statistics? I hope you got the question. Is there a policy framework, or perhaps you are backed by your statistical law? Because we're looking at, sustainable use, so to speak, and in the absence of some enabling law and policy, there might be concerns from, multiple stakeholders in your country. So one question, the second question, so that I can just take it very quickly. What were some of the concerns of your stakeholders, and this includes the MNOs, the mobile network operators, some stakeholders like civil society, or even the general citizen. What were some of their concerns when you started out in regard to accessing this data and use for statistical purposes, and how did you address those concerns? So hold those questions, think through it. Let me shoot a question quickly to start off with Sierra Leone, and then we'll come back to you. So thank you, Theophilus. Just wanting to know, if you look at the various stages of your data flow, whether it was in the production or the access of data to storage, analysis, processing, and what have you. So if you look at these various stages, what were two key stages? I would like you to highlight two of your key stages that was a major challenge for you, your institution, and how did you address those challenges? So that's first question. Any stage in your data process, your data flow that was a major challenge to you. And the second question is, is the current architecture that you are laid out, is it currently fully integrated within your data architecture? And I'm saying this for the purpose of sustainability, and you have a policy framework also right now that can help you enable that properly, and that you then can continually use that for other data application within your operation. So let's stop there. I know we're running quickly out of time. Over to you, Lamin.
Thank you very much, Victor, for those two questions. I think, in fact, the first question was very timely because we thought about this component being taken care of in our Statistical Act, and it came at a time when we had started revising the Act since 2019, and we had a lot of back and forth. Just 2 days ago, I think it was on Monday, the Director of Quality sent an email to the Solicitor General highlighting this same point, and then I replied. I gave him a call and said these points were inserted into the Act by myself, so I don't know why the current version of the statistical bill that you have does not have those components. So I referred him to the Solicitor General to give him the latest version. So we tried to incorporate the non-conventional statistical data sources into the Act so that we can have that coverage and the protection. It's not limited to mobile phone data. We have the citizen-generated data. We have the satellite imagery and other things. So we want to make sure the non-conventional source of data also captured into our data. Even the private sector data was not properly catered for in our Act, and we want to make sure the Act is now all encompassing. So there is already step taken to make sure we have those things addressed. When it comes to the concerns were only from the MNOs, and in fact that resulted in the resistance from one of the MNOs, the second largest, which is QCell. Until today, of course, Ayumi can tell you we cannot have data from QCell. For them, I think they are just reluctant, and then they felt we are just monetizing the data, and that is the reason why they don't want to give. But then for the other MNOs, they are more concerned about security and protection of their clients, so that they are not going to be exposed and they being held responsible for those exposure. So we had to rely on first our own principles that guide us, the principle of official statistics. Of course, we have data protection, protection of the individuals and their records. Then we also had to use the legal framework at PURA, because that also has a clause that protects the users and the clients. So those two frameworks had to be used in negotiating with the MNOs to be able to get access to their data. So we did not engage in the subscribers of course. So we wouldn't know what their concerns are going to be, but eventually these are things that are going to come out, not only with CDR data, but other sorts of data. But then again, like I said, we have data protection laws that are being developed by the Ministry of Justice. So those are all things that we can always use to support ourselves in getting the data. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamin. That was really super an answer. A lot of questions are still, but we don't have so much time. Let's quickly go. We have just 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Theophilus, please, if you can use the next one.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Victor. The last question was one of our key challenge. In fact, if we have an integrated data architecture into our existing system, that one is no. We are having a lot of manual process, and we are looking forward how we can get this being fully automated. And the second question related to storage, yes, there is a lot of challenge. We are looking around ways how we can optimize our storage and to increase our retention of data policy that's been stored within StatSL. Provisionally, on premises, we want to improve on our data storage facility.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Theophilus and Lamin. Samra, I don't know if there are anybody with questions. I haven't seen any questions typed in the chat, panel. So maybe I could hand over back to you. Just 2 minutes to the hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor, and then all the speakers. This was really inspiring presentation so far. Let me share my screen now. So now moving ahead, I will try to bring together a few of the evolving tools and technologies that are present in this data infrastructure. And then many of these tools we may have heard in some of the presentations by many of the speakers today. And then I want to start with this image that I pulled from internet. That this was prepared by Dataiku team, and they named it Technosalvia. And then there are, if you see, a lot of tools, and then they have classified into different categories. Like, I will not go into all of them, but like, I just wanted to highlight there are a lot. We're not going to use all of them. We're just going to use few of these tools and then build our data pipeline. So for example, there is this Kettle or Pentaho PTI, or Scoop or Talent. Few of these tools we saw in the presentation being used. Another important category I want to highlight is this data orchestration zone, where you can monitor your data pipeline using tools like Apache Airflow, Perfect, and Metaflow, and so forth. And then there is this distributed quadrant like Hadoop, Spark, and then a real-time island like Apache Kafka or Flink, and so forth. Another one of the architecture I wanted to share in this workshop is this unified data infrastructure architecture. This is built together with, this was built by, in collaboration with various, or in contribution with various industry experts in data field. And then the overall layers are the same. Like, there is a various data source that is integrated using a few of these tools, and then it's stored either in a data warehouse, data lakes, and then processed, finally transformed into some meaningful statistics and analytics, and then produced as a data output. I just wanted to highlight again a data flow workflow manager using tools like Airflow or Daxter, and then pull it into data lake, where data could be stored in various formats like Apache Parquet format, ORC, or Evro, like row-oriented storage or column-oriented storage. And then this could be pushed it into the analytics. And one very important part at the bottom, of this unified infrastructure architecture is data discoverability, data governance, data observability, and entitlements and security. I think these are cross-cutting layers on top of these processes. So using that same architecture, I just created a process flow where we are pulling data from various innovative sources or administrative source like mobile phone data or satellite data or administrative data or so forth. We could just use one of these tools. So maybe we could use Pentaho PDI as a low coding tool to pull data, or there are other options also. Or if you are good if you have a programming team, you could also use scripts to pull data and then store it in your storage, for example. And then you could merge these, or you could link this data with a primary data source like sensors and surveys. And then I just put this one process of record linkage. If you already have unique IDs, it's easy for you to link these records. But like, if there are not, if we do not have those unique IDs to link, there are various probabilistic and machine learning algorithms with libraries that can help you link those data. This is not the methodology, but like some libraries only, and then you could use this links data to do some analytics or perform machine learning and so forth. And then another topic that came in few of these presentations where it was deployed, like was it on-premise, cloud, or hybrid? And then I just wanted to say, even if we are in cloud or hybrid, it is also subcategorized, whether it is even in the cloud, where it could be like you could be using only infrastructure as a service, where you will only be using the network and storage service in the cloud. And then as we go towards platform as a service and software as a service, our control diminishes of those processes, but also our responsibility also decreases. That means trying proof of concept also can be really easy if we go into platform as a service or software as a service. I just wanted to say, like, UN also has UN Global Platform that provides easy access to technologies and cloud infrastructure that also reduces the barrier to execution of the project as well. And then a few trends I just wanted to briefly highlight are like, now a lot of shift is towards open data architecture. If we saw in our presentation as well, there was a lot of open source tools that were being used in designing the architecture. And then data governance, observability, and discoverability of the data is also becoming really big and a very important part of it. Data, metadata, master data management tools are also very important. And then another important trend is like a brittle extraction, transformation, and loading process are being replaced by a more flexible extraction and loading of the data and then transforming as needed. And then data flow automation and workflow management is also becoming really big at the moment. Putting a final thought here to all our participants is like, the goal is a progress here and not perfection. And then we need to accept slow migration, and then maybe we can start with small proof of concept projects and then work in a very agile way towards moving ahead. And then I think we also need to accept our legacy systems. I think they should coexist in our platform if possible. And then, as Luis had mentioned at the beginning, there is no silver bullet. And then depending on your country's need, we need to design our architecture to move ahead. I hope this is just the beginning, and then I hope this has inspired us. So in this modern data infrastructure architecture that links innovative tools and technologies, and hopefully it will directly feed to policy engagement as well. So thank you so much to all the participants. And then if I would just open the floor for any questions or comments you have. Before I pass it to Viveki for
any questions from anyone. You are welcome to put them in the chat as well. But otherwise, of course, there will be many opportunities for asking questions once we officially start with the project, and also for further interaction with those of you who are not part of the project, of course, where that is relevant in other contexts. It seems to me, Samrat, that you and our presenters have explained everything very well. I see Edwin. Please come in if you have a question.
Yeah, a very big thank and an appreciation to all for the meeting and for the inspiration of all this we are doing. What I want to know, I got all the presentation from the various people, including my director. I want to know, because like some of us are in the provinces, so those other people who have been using the same system, I want to know how they are well distributed in the various district they are working within their own country, because some of us also face a lot of challenges in that, of which my director just mentioned a lot of them. So I want to know what is the experience of from the other countries, how best their own system is distributed cut across their own country. So that's my question.
So Viveki, can you take this?
So I think it's a question on regional versus national, and how you kind of bring in the regional agencies, and you kind of create an infrastructure that helps the regions in the context as well. Was that correctly understood, Edwin?
All right.
Daniel, you want to come in and give some input on this? Also our colleague from UNSD.
Thank you, Vicky. Edwin, that's an excellent question. As you've seen in the presentations, the progress, as Luis was putting it, that we don't have any silver bullet addressing all these issues. But the plan is you could start at the headquarters level, set up this environment, then spread it out across districts. There are different implementations. If you remember, I think Samra put a very big tool set on the slide where you can pick and choose. And there are tools that will help to a specific situation, and there are tools that will kind of help at the overall national context. So this is like a case-by-case basis, and then those countries we will be engaging with will be one of the key things we'll be working with is identifying the problem, as you mentioned, the gap between infrastructure per se at the district level versus at the headquarters level. So these are things that need to be studied a bit and provide solutions that fit. There are local solutions that work, and there are technologies that help this disconnected environment to work using low infrastructure per se, whether connectivity or storage and things like that. But this is something that we have in the plan, and this is just to give you an idea of what it would encompass. But the actual work will be a one-to-one engagement with countries, and Sierra Leone is one of them, where we will be engaging further in identifying these issues. So this is just a teaser to the actual work. Back to you, Vicky. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel and Edwin. I see one more question, and then after that we can close, right? So the question is from Angel, and then it's about when to use cloud versus online premise solution. For that one, I think I would just briefly say that it totally depends upon your requirement. If you need more control of your applications, data, and the whole network, maybe privacy, also policy as well of your country would govern it. And then if you need more of the control, you can go towards on-premise solutions. But like if there are policies that can allow you to go towards cloud, there is, of course, you have a little less control of what is you control, but like you get more service from these service providers. So it is totally depending upon the country's need as to whether you want to go on-premise or stay in a full cloud or go in a hybrid implementation. And then regarding the Airflow, I think it is a really good tool to do workflow automation and data orchestration. But like not just Airflow, I think it has evolved to you. Daxter and Perfect are, I think, their evolution. But like it depends upon your need as well. I think Airflow, you cannot go wrong. Thank you. And then with that, I think I will pass to Viveki.
Thank you so much, and I'll close this last of the 3 inspiration workshops. First of all, big thanks to all of you for joining. Thanks to all our speakers, and thanks to the partners, our core partners with GPSTD and Victor as a representative, STSN Trends and the World Bank. And also special thanks to the UNSD team that has been in focus today, that focuses on IT architecture and infrastructure, Samrat, Louis, Daniel, and Daniela, a consultant who is supporting us in the Data for Now work. We've heard today a number of different aspects around IT architecture and also infrastructure. And as Daniel and Samrat said before, we are now just at the starting point. So the actual implementation and the meetings with you bilaterally, country by country, we will reach out to and get started on very soon. And one of the topics we will discuss with you then is whether you need support and you are interested in support in this area of work, and what would be your main needs, which also links to our 2 first workshops that focused on policy engagement, user engagement, and on innovation. The innovation work, for instance, will to some extent at least influence what kind of infrastructure you're interested in and you will need. So we will try and make these different aspects of the Data for Now initiative and this specific project work in parallel, also working with partners, the 4 core partners, and also other partners as needed, both globally, regionally, and nationally. I mentioned that we will work with you bilaterally. We still do not have the agreement with the Italian donor signed, but it seems to be around the corner. So we expect to formally start engagement in May. We can already have continued informal exchanges before that, and feel free to reach out to us. We will also continue to reach out to you. For those of you who have not already sent us materials, this is also a reminder to send the SWOT analysis that we had related to the first workshop, and to inform us about focal points and other questions that we had been asking. We will share a brief questionnaire to you on the IT architecture after this workshop today, but we are also going to send you a questionnaire that is a bit longer at some point next week to get your feedback on these 3 sessions, get some further information on some of the areas that we have been discussing, and we hope that you will send it back to us. That will help us also to further develop and address the interests and the needs that you have. I think those were the main points I wanted to make. One more point I can repeat is that we will be sharing all the PowerPoints with you. We will be sharing the recordings. Some of it has already been shared, but we've had some technical issues with some of the recordings, are currently solving that. So our assumption is that we will be able to put it all together on our project website at some point next week, hopefully, at the latest the week after. In the meantime, you can already check out the website for other information, including what Louis shared a bit earlier, our first data story that focuses on the IT architecture work in Colombia. So with that, again, big thanks to all of you. We're looking forward to the continuation, and we really hope that these 3 workshops on inspiration have inspired you, and we wish you all the best until we get in touch again bilaterally, and feel free also to reach out to see if there's exchanges we can do across both project countries and more widely. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day, everyone. Bye-bye.